First at 9 this Tuesday, the 26th of November 2024. Budget 2025. Budget 2025 to be tabled in Parliament on the 9th of February next year. 219 billion rupee supplementary estimate for 2024. Next disbursement. Fourth tranche of the IMF Extended Fund Facility expected in April next year, assures Deputy Minister. Disruptive weather. GCE Advanced Level Examination suspended amid inclement weather. Over 75,000 people in 15 districts affected. Fine lines. People of the North can commemorate slain relatives, but promoting the LTTE is off limits, says the Public Security Minister.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawam, Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසින් ලබාගත හැක.
කන්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe වැස්සත් මට්ටුවෙන් ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I'm Tharidu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. In your top story this evening, as Sri Lanka continues to experience incessant rains, prompting floods and landslides across the country, the Department of Examinations announced today that the A-level examination currently in progress will be suspended for the next 3 days. Meanwhile, a 61-year-old person in Bandaravela was reported dead after a concrete wall collapsed onto her house this morning, marking the first life claimed by the recent adverse weather. Against this backdrop, the Disaster Management Centre announced that the number of people affected due to the inclement weather patterns increased to over 75,000. Several parts of the country continue to receive incessant rains today as a result of the depression over the southwestern area of the Bay of Bengal. The eastern province was the most affected due to the current adverse weather, with the highest rainfall of 311.1 millimeters during the past 24 hours being reported from the Ampara district. Traffic in the area was also disrupted as the overflowing of several reservoirs led to the inundation of certain main roads in the area. Similarly, several areas in the Batticaloa district continue to remain submerged owing to the persisting heavy downpours. The heavy downpours in the northern province prompted floods in several localities in the Mullaitivu and Vaunia districts, severely inconveniencing the public. As heavy rainfall continued across the country, landslides were reported from many areas in the Uva province. Meanwhile, in Bindunuwava Bandaravela, a 61-year-old woman lost her life after a concrete wall collapsed onto her house this morning. In a similar incident, another family of 3 who sustained severe injuries after a mound of earth collapsed onto their house was rushed to the Badul Teaching Hospital for immediate treatment. In light of the persisting heavy downpours, the Department of Examinations announced that the ongoing 2024 GCE Advanced Level Examination will be temporarily suspended.
කාලගුණ විද්‍යා දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව විසින් නිකුත් කරලා තිබෙන කාලගුණ අනාවැකිත් සමග අපිට ඉදිරි දිනවල විභාගයේ පැවැත්වීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් හදිසි තීරණයක් ගැනීමට සිදු වෙලා තිබෙනවා. අපි ඉදිරි දින 3 තුල විභාගයේ නොපැවැත්වීමට තීරණය කරලා තිබෙනවා. නොවැම්බර් මාස 27 වෙනි බදාදා, 28 වෙනි බ්‍රහස්පතින්දා සහ 29 වෙනි සිකුරාදා පැවැත්වීමට නියමිත ඒ විභාගය ඒ දින තුල පැවැත්වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ දින තුනට නියමිත විභාගය දෙසැම්බර් මාස 21
Meanwhile, in its latest reports, the Disaster Management Centre stated that a total of 77,670 persons belonging to 22,532 families in 15 districts remain severely affected due to the persisting inclement weather. The DMC also noted that 2,770 people have already been directed to 821 safe locations across the same districts. Issuing a red advisory for heavy rains tomorrow, the Department of Meteorology forecast that the persisting heavy rains will further continue due to the depression in the vicinity of Sri Lanka. Accordingly, the Meteorological Department anticipates heavy rainfall above 200 millimeters to occur in the northern, eastern, central and Uva provinces. Taking the current inclement weather patterns into account, the National Building Research Organisation issued warning level 2 amber warnings to several areas in the Badulla, Kandy, Kegol, Kurunegala, Matale and Nuwara districts.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
The budget 2025 is to be tabled in Parliament on the 9th of February next year. The Cabinet of Ministers has given approval for the budget proposal to be prepared and the appropriation bill to be submitted to Parliament on the 9th of February next year, thereby enabling the second reading, also known as the budget speech, to be made on the 17th of February. Subsequently, the third reading and the budget debate will be held from the 27th of February to the 21st of March next year. Meanwhile, the Cabinet has also approved the submission of a supplementary estimate for the remaining period of 2024, totaling to 219 billion rupees to Parliament for concurrence. This includes 130 billion rupees to be allocated to the Department of Public Enterprise to pay the interest subsidy for banks for the debt restructuring of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, which was transferred to the government balance sheet. Additionally, 32 million rupees are to be allocated to the Department of Development Finance to reimburse banks for the additional interest incurred in granting special interest rates to senior citizens. Meanwhile, the Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Professor Anil Jayantha, stated that the fourth tranche under the International Monetary Fund's Extended Fund Facility is expected to be released by April 2025. Speaking at the Cabinet briefing today, he explained that the process was delayed by 2 months due to the elections held in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, Cabinet spokesman Dr. Nalinda Jatisa mentioned that government is eager to hold the local government elections as soon as possible.
ඇමතුමෙන් දැන් පළාත් පාලන මැතිවරණ සම්බන්ධ ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨාධිකරණයේ තීන්දුවක් තියෙනවා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඊයේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ සාකච්ඡා වුණාද?
අපේ රාජ්‍ය අවශ්‍යතාවයත් හැකි ඉක්මනින් මේ
We are eager to hold the LG polls as soon as possible. The postponement has caused significant disruption to local government operations. This is in turn has impacted the implementation of development projects in rural areas. The main issue is not financial, rather it is about party leaders reaching a consensus as to whether to proceed with the current list of candidates. This matter was discussed during the party leaders meeting yesterday. Once a decision is finalized, we can move forward and hold the elections promptly.
The thing is that usually that when the new parliamentarians comes, they are getting some securities. Yesterday that Jaffna district MP Dr. Archana also asked how get a security for him because he has some threats. So what's the standard of the government?
Giving any special security for anyone, we will take the threat assessment from Security Council and we will discuss which MPs need more security. Even cabinet ministers are not allowed for special security. I don't think at the moment he is having such kind of threat.
ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය ආරමුදල සමග වෙන මූලික ණය එකඟතා ගිවිසුමේ දැන් සිව්වන අධියර මං හිතන්නේ එන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඒකේ අපිට අද දවසේදී දැනගන්න ලැබුණා මේ සිව්වන අධියරේ ණය වාරිකයේ අයවැයෙන් පස්සේ තමයි අපේ රටට හම්බෙන්නේ කියලා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මොකද එහෙම තත්ත්වයක්
විශේෂ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නිසා ප්‍රමාද වීමක් සිද්ධ වෙලා නැහැ.
The review was initially scheduled for September, but it was postponed due to the elections. This has caused a delay of about 2 months. Currently, we have reached a staff level agreement and some aspects of this agreement will be reflected in the 2025 budget. The next step is to forward it for the board level approval, which will be done by the end of January. As a result, we expect to receive the tranche by April.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
Diabetesol සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
And with that, here's a look at some more decisions taken during the first cabinet meeting of the new government.
In response to escalating rice prices and a scarcity of Nadu rice, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the immediate importation of 70,000 metric tons of golden rice as a substitute. Meanwhile, the Cabinet has approved a proposal by the Minister of Power and Energy to award a diesel procurement contract to BB Energy Asia Private Limited. The decision follows an evaluation of bids submitted by 6 registered suppliers of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. The procurement involves 4 shipments of diesel to be delivered between the 15th of December 2024 and the 14th of June 2025, as recommended by a special standing procurement committee. Meanwhile, in a bid to enhance financial transparency, the Cabinet has approved the publication of the government's financial performance report for the third quarter of 2024. As per Section 53(1) of the Public Financial Management Act number 44 of 2024, the report details the accumulated revenue and expenditure of ministries, departments and district secretariats as of September 30th, 2024. The report is expected to be published on the ministry's website within 45 days of the quarter's end.
Minister of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs Ananda Vijayapala asserts that the people of the North are free to commemorate their relatives slain during the Civil War, but that the promotion of the LTTE at such events is prohibited as it remains a proscribed organisation. Meanwhile, Cabinet spokesperson Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa clarified measures will be taken by police on the politicians and individuals who illegally interfered in the Remembrance Day celebrations. Tamil communities in several areas of the northern province held ceremonies yesterday to commemorate deceased members of the LTTE and other Tamil people who lost their lives during the Civil War. The commemorations were held in the premises of the University of Jaffna, the Kalmadu area in Vaunia and the Mullavala area in Mullativ. Tamil communities lit oil lamps to commemorate their deceased relatives in Kopai Mahavirar Cemetery, Jaffna, and Vanni Vilankulam Mahavirar Cemetery. In the meantime, a celebration was organised by former MP M.K. Sivajalingam in front of the house of the slain LTTE leader Velupillai Prabhakaran, located in Valvaditure, Jaffna, to mark the slain leader's 70th birthday. As residents took part in the celebrations, the Valvaditure police requested that the images of the slain LTTE chief be removed, and the residents complied with the request in order to continue the celebrations. Subsequently, 70 saplings were planted and 70 sets of stationery were distributed to students. Against such a backdrop, the Minister of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs Ananda Vijayapala asserted that no commemorations related to the LTTE are allowed within the country.
Anyone can legally commemorate their relatives. However, no one is allowed to hold Mahavira remembrance events in the northern province while displaying symbols or uniforms of the LTTE. According to the country's law, the LTTE is a proscribed organisation. However, people from any province have the right to commemorate their deceased children, but proscribed organizations cannot use such commemorations to re-establish themselves. We have not placed any restrictions on these people to commemorate their relatives. Sometimes these commemorations have been interpreted differently. Therefore, we would like to clarify to the country that the LTTE remains a proscribed organization and they are not permitted to hold Mahavira remembrance events using their symbols. That being said, the government will not restrict people from holding commemorations for their deceased loved ones.
Meanwhile, during today's cabinet briefing, cabinet spokesman Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa was queried on the Remembrance Day events in the northern province.
දැන් හිටානිද්දා උතුරු පළාතේ තුල මේ මහවිරු උත්සවය සමරන්නට සූදානම් කරලා තියෙනවා.
අපි කටයුතු කරන්නේ 2011 අගෝස්තු 29.
There's a gazette notification published on 29th of August 2010. According to that gazette, no individual is allowed to collect funds on behalf of terrorist or proscribed organizations, promote and organize them or display their symbols. The Public Security Minister has clearly explained these facts to media. Nevertheless, if a person is personally commemorating their deceased relatives, the government has no right to disrupt it. We have clearly stated that we respect those individuals' right to commemorate, but the government will not allow anyone to commemorate proscribed organizations.
නමුත් අපිට දැන් වාර්තා වෙනවා අද දවසේදී වවුනියාව සහ යාපනයේ දිස්ත්‍රික්කවල ප්‍රභාකරන් සමරනවා මේ යම් යම් ස්ථානවල කියලා. එතකොට මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගන්න ක්‍රියාමාර්ග මොනවද කියලා පැහැදිලි කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් හොඳයි.
There are some politicians and other figures in the north who illegally interfere in these Remembrance Day events from time to time. However, we will not allow that. The police will definitely take action regarding this issue.
The Colombo Chief Magistrates Court today issued a notice directing former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran to appear before the court on the 25th of February next year. The relevant notice was issued over a case filed by the Bribery Commission pertaining to the controversial bond issue in 2015 with alleged misappropriation of bonds causing a loss of over 10 billion rupees to the government. Colombo Magistrate Tirina Gamage issued the order today after considering a request made by the Bribery Commission. The United Nations Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka, Marc-Andre Franch, called on the government to deliver on its promise of addressing gender-based violence in Sri Lanka by allocating funds for the purpose through the budget proposal. He made this statement while addressing an event organised by the UN, the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence and the government to raise awareness of gender-based violence. Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, who also participated in the event, reaffirmed Sri Lanka's commitment to ending violence against women and pledged to introduce a comprehensive program to combat violence and harassment. A walk to raise awareness of gender-based violence under the theme Towards a GBV-free Sri Lanka, Safe Public Spaces for All, organised by the United Nations in Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government and the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence took place last evening, starting from the Independence Square and ending at the Colombo Municipal Council. The walk marked the launch of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, an annual international campaign spanning from the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women on the 25th of November until Human Rights Day on the 10th of December. The event was attended by Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Minister of Women and Child Affairs Saroja Polraj, UN Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka Marc-Andre Franch, and the United Nations Population Fund's representative for Sri Lanka Kunle Adenei.
Our transport sector is rife with harassment. As we speak, there is ongoing training to see that conductors and drivers can be sensitized on what they will not accept in their vehicles. The ministry has 1938 as a helpline that people can seek help when they are harassed. The police force have about 14 emergency waiting areas to support women. All I've been saying remain issues around response, but response does not stop violence. We must do more with prevention. We expect funding, we expect support, and most importantly, we need government to lead in a public campaign to say we do not want violence anymore.
Gender-based violence remains one of the most pervasive human rights violations in the world. We have 5 cases of rape every day in Sri Lanka. The digital sphere has emerged as a new battleground, with women facing online harassment, misogynistic hate speech, and image abuse. While we have small steps forward, many challenges remain. The United Nations is committed in working together with government in ending violence against women and girls. We have an NPP manifesto that we now need to put into action. We have a national budget conversation coming up. How much money are we going to put in ending violence against women?
Sri Lanka reaffirms its commitment to ending violence against women. However, affirming our commitments is not enough. We must move beyond words to action. Ending violence against women requires political will at the highest levels. It requires us to strengthen institutions, to respond effectively to cases of violence, ensure justice for survivors, and provide accessible mental health and rehabilitative support. We must invest in education and awareness programs that challenge harmful social norms, and we must empower local communities to take ownership of these efforts. The government will also prioritize creating inclusive public spaces, transport systems, workplaces, and institutions that are free from harassment and violence. This requires a multi-sectoral approach, aligning policies, allocating resources, and holding ourselves accountable for progress.
And now here's a look at the latest political developments. A meeting of the Samagi Jana Balavegaya was held today at the Opposition Leader's office under the patronage of Opposition Leader Sajith Premadasa.
ඒක යම්සි ක්‍රමයක් තියෙන්න එපා හැම කෙනාක්ම සාකච්ඡා කරලා මොකද ඉල්ලීම් වැඩි පරාද වෙන්න ඕනේ නැතේ පරාද වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ මැතිවරණය. මොකද මේ මැතිවරණය වෙනස්ව ප්‍රතිඵලයක් ලබා දුන්න එක. ඒ ප්‍රතිඵලයේ නිසා පරාද වෙච්ච අයට අසාධාරණ වෙච්ච දැන් තියෙනවා. අපිට යම් යම් පෙරදුනක් ගන්න වෙයි. මොකද මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ අපේ ඉන්න කණ්ඩායම දුරට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය පුද්ගලයෝ කවුද කියලා හරියට අඳුරගෙන ඒ කාර්යභාරය ඉෂ්ට කරන්න පුළුවන්. පක්ෂයට හයිය දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ දායක වෙන්න පුළුවන් පිරිසක් අපිට අවශ්‍යයි.
Meanwhile, several other politicians expressed their opinions about the current political climate and the nomination of nationalist MPs.
කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපගේ වගකීම හිටුකීම පමණයි. අපේ පක්ෂය දෙනකොට මැතිවරණයට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න අපි නිකම්ම දුන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක එකකතාවයක් අනුව දුන්නේ. ඒකේ තිබුණේ ජාතික ලයිස්තු මන්ත්‍රී ධූරවලින් ලැබෙන එකෙන් එකක් අපිට අනිවාර්යයෙන් ලැබිය යුතුයි. ඉතින් ඒ අනුව අපි අපේ පක්ෂය රැස් කරලා ඒ ගැන ගත යුතු තීරණය ගත්තාම ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ එකමතික තීරණය උනේ රවි කරුණානායක මහත්මයාව පත් කරන්න.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයා කණ්ඩායමේ නායකයා හැටියට ඔහු සමග සාකච්ඡාවක් කළේ නැද්ද?
අපි අපේ තීරණය ලබා දුන්නා එතුමාට මම පෞද්ගලිකව ගිහිල්ලා ෆ්ලවර් රෝඩ් ඔෆිස් එකේදී 18 වෙනිදා උදේ 10ට යාගේ අතට බාර දුන්නා. එතුමා කිව්වා අපි ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරමු කියලා. සාකච්ඡා කිරීමට දෙයක් තිබුණේ නැහැනේ අපේ පක්ෂයේ තීරණය අනුව අපිට ලැබිය යුතු දෙයක්. ඒ අනිත් මන්ත්‍රී ධූරය අයිති සන්දාන පක්ෂවලට. ඒ සන්දාන පක්ෂ වලින් තීරණය කරලා මට නමක් දුන්නාම මම ඒක යවනවා.
දැන් මේ ජාතික ලයිස්ට් ප්‍රශ්නේ තාම විසඳිලා නැහැ.
ඒක තමයි අපිත් කල්පනා කරන්නේ මේ 5 දෙනා ලබා දෙන්න බැරි වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තෝරා ගැනීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙලක් නායකත්වයේ තුල පක්ෂීය ජ්‍යෙෂ්ඨයන් තුල තිබෙන්නේ ඇයිද කියන කාරණේ සැකය අපට තිබෙනවා. මොකද මේ වෙලාවේ මේ ජාතික ලයිස්ට්ුවේ 5 දෙනාවත් තෝරා ගන්න බැරි දේශපාලන පක්ෂයක් බවට පත් වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් මේක මෙහෙම වෙන්න බෑ. නායකයෙක් වුණාම පක්ෂයක් වුණාම පක්ෂ ජ්‍යෙෂ්ඨයන්ට Tamanට කොන්දක් හයියක් ශක්තියක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. මේ වෙලාවේ මේ ජාතික ලයිස්ට්ුව පත් කළා ඉවර කළා අහවර කරා.
Welcome back. Now, Sri Lanka has decided to exchange existing sovereign bonds for new bonds. Accordingly, the government today officially invited stakeholders to implement the restructuring of international sovereign bonds under the IMF program. As announced, international sovereign bonds totaling to approximately $12.55 billion outstanding as of the 25th of November 2024 will be restructured. The Sri Lankan sovereign bondholders ad hoc group issued a statement supporting the restructuring plan, which includes all 11 categories of outstanding sovereign bonds. In June this year, Sri Lanka reached a final consensus with the official creditor committee on debt restructuring. By September, an initial agreement was reached with international bondholders to restructure $14.2 billion in sovereign debt, totaling following discussions with the ad hoc bondholders, international investors, and a local consortium. The Colombo bourse closed on a positive note today as a result of price gains in counters such as John Keells Holdings, Hatton National Bank and Commercial Bank. The all share price index climbed 0.76% to settle at 12,964.03 points, while the S&P SL20 climbed 1.30% to end at 3,844.12 points. Market turnover crossed 1.1 billion rupees. The banking sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, followed by the capital goods sector. Foreigners closed as net sellers, offloading stocks worth 134 million rupees. And with that, let's take a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. Welcome back. Now in international news, Donald Trump says he will impose new tariffs on China, Mexico and Canada in an effort to force them to crack down on illegal immigration and drug smuggling into the US. The US President-elect said that immediately after his inauguration on the 20th of January, he will sign an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on all goods from Mexico and Canada. The tariffs are expected to remain in place until the two countries clamp down on drugs, particularly the synthetic opioid fentanyl, and migrants illegally crossing the border. Meanwhile, Trump has said an additional 10% tariff will be levied on China until Beijing blocks smuggling of fentanyl from the country. He also threatened to end China's most favored nation trading status with the US, the most advantageous terms Washington offers on tariffs and other restrictions. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.